Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who let himself get walked over. When I married Emily, I believed in us. I believed in building something together, something real. I worked hard, put in long hours to provide for us, to make sure we had the kind of life we had always dreamed of. But somewhere along the way, I became something else. Not a husband, not a partner, just background noise. Emily had a way of making me feel small without ever raising her voice. She didn't need to yell. Her words cut just fine on their own. "Jake, you're covered in dust again," she sighed one evening, barely looking up from her phone as I walked in after a 10-hour shift. I paused in the doorway, exhausted, aching from head to toe. "Yeah, because I work for a living, Emily." She rolled her eyes, standing up and brushing past me. "It wouldn't kill you to clean up before walking in like that. This house isn't a construction site." I swallowed the irritation bubbling in my throat. I had heard this before, over and over. It wasn't a joke, not really. It was a dig, one of many. Dinner that night was the same routine. Emily sat across from me, scrolling through her phone while I picked at my plate, barely listening as she talked about some new yoga studio she wanted to try. I can't not go," she said, finally glancing up at me. "All the other wives are already signed up. It's the place to be." I forced a smile. "Sound great," she sighed, setting her phone down dramatically. "You don't care, do you?" I blinked. "What? You don't care about anything I do." I let out a slow breath, gripping my fork a little tighter. "Emily, I just got home from 12-hour shift. I'm tired." "You're always tired," she cut in, shaking her head. "Always too tired for me. Too tired to do anything fun. Do you even remember the last time we went out?" I rubbed my temple. "We went to dinner last week." She scoffed. "Sitting in a booth at some diner isn't going out, Jake." I should have fought back. Should have called her out on how she never appreciated anything I did. But I didn't, because that was the trap. If I argued, I was too sensitive. If I ignored it, I was emotionally unavailable. So I did what I always did. I let it go. The next weekend, we hosted a small get-together with family and friends. I should have known it would go south before it even started. Emily was in her element, laughing, chatting, making sure everyone saw how perfect her life was. Meanwhile, I was on grill duty, because that was my role. "Jake, are the steaks burnt yet?" she teased from across the yard, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. People chuckled. I forced a smile. "Not yet." She smirked, taking a sip of her drink. "That's a first." The laughter got louder. I felt my jaw tighten. She loved doing this, making me the punchline, turning me into the bumbling husband who tried but never quite measured up. Later, when I sat down, finally done with grilling, she kept going. "Jake has been working so hard lately," she said, her voice dripping with fake admiration. "Too bad none of it is in the gym." The table erupted in laughter. I put my beer down slowly. Her friends laughed the loudest. Even my friends chuckled awkwardly, not sure if they should or not. Emily just smiled, leaning in her chair like she had just delivered the best joke of the night. I wasn't smiling. Something inside me snapped in that moment. Not in a loud, dramatic way. Not in a way that made me want to throw my chair back and storm off. No, it was something quieter, colder. I took a slow sip of my beer, staring at her over the rim of my glass. And I saw her. Not the woman I married. Not the woman I had fought so hard to make happy. Just a woman who no longer respected me. Who never had respected me. I set my beer down. "Hey, Emily," I said, my voice calm. She tilted her head, still smirking. "Yeah." I leaned forward slightly. "Remember that time you said you'd start cooking more, but kept ordering takeout instead?" The table went silent. Emily's smirk faltered. I shrugged. Guess we both let ourselves go. The air shifted. Someone coughed. Emily stared at me, her cheeks flushing red. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, she was speechless. I picked up my beer again, taking another slow sip. No one laughed. Emily forced a tight smile, standing up abruptly. "Excuse me," she muttered, walking inside. I sat back in my chair, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Satisfaction. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning. The beginning of seeing things clearly. of realizing that I wasn't the weak one, that maybe, just maybe, I had spent years married to a woman who never deserved me in the first place. Emily didn't speak to me for the rest of the night after I embarrassed her in front of her friends. She stormed inside, and I let her go, let her simmer in it. I was past the point of trying to smooth things over. Let her feel it for once. The party eventually died down, and guests trickled out the door. I thanked people for coming, shaking hands, and giving nods where necessary. My brother, Mark, was the last to leave, hanging back by the driveway. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "You all right?" I scoffed. "You saw what happened." He nodded. "I also saw you finally stand up for yourself." I exhaled. "Yeah." Mark clapped a hand on my shoulder. "About time." I didn't respond, just watched as his taillights disappeared down the street. When I stepped inside, Emily was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, her back stiff as she glared at me. What the hell was that? I walked past her, opening the fridge for a bottle of water. What was what? She let out a sharp laugh, incredulous. "You humiliated me, Jake." I twisted the cap off the bottle, took a long sip, and leaned against the counter. "Oh, I humiliated you?" "Yes," she snapped. "You've never done anything like that before. What the hell got into you?" I tilted my head. "Maybe I finally got tired of being your personal punching bag." Her mouth opened, then closed. I pushed off the counter, my tone eerily calm. "You do it all the time, Emily. Little comments here, little jabs there. Always making sure everyone around us knows that you think you're better than me. I don't measure up." She scoffed. "You're being dramatic." I stepped closer. "No, I'm done." Something flickered across her face, something uncertain, something I had never seen before. I wasn't playing my role anymore. I wasn't backing down, wasn't shrugging it off. She shifted on her feet. "I was joking, Jake. Everyone knows that." I let out a dry laugh. "Right. Just like you were joking last Christmas when you told my family I'd be nothing without you. Just like you were joking last week when you rolled your eyes at me in front of your friends and called me predictable." Her face twisted with irritation. "Why are you bringing up old stuff?" "Because it's not old," I snapped. "It's constant. It's every damn day." And I let it slide for years because I thought maybe you'd change. Silence filled the space between us. Emily crossed her arms tighter. "You're being ridiculous." "No," I said, stepping back, shaking my head. "I'm being honest." She narrowed her eyes. "So what? You're going to hold a grudge now? Start acting like some victim?" I let out a slow breath, calming the fire rising in my chest. "I'm not playing the victim, Emily. I'm just done playing the fool." Her expression hardened. "Well, if you're so miserable, maybe you should leave." For the first time, I saw it, her testing me, seeing if I call her bluff. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "Careful, Emily." Her lips parted slightly, but I didn't give her a chance to speak. I grabbed my keys off the counter, turned, and walked out the front door. I drove with no destination in mind, just needed space. Needed air. My fingers tightened around the wheel as I replayed everything in my head. The insults, the dismissals, the way she always turned everything around on me. How'd I let it get this bad? By the time I pulled into a gas station parking lot, my head was clearer. I sat in the silence, the hum of passing cars the only sound in the air. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. She had been treating me like this for years, and I had let her. Not anymore. When I finally made it back home, the house was dark. I walked inside, locking the door behind me. Emily was upstairs, the door to our bedroom shut. I wasn't about to crawl into bed with her like everything was fine. Instead, I grabbed a blanket from the closet and laid down on the couch. The house was eerily silent, but for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I wasn't losing my mind. I was waking up, and something told me that this was just the beginning. I woke up to the first rays of sunlight filtering through the living room blinds. My back ached from the stiff couch cushions, a reminder that I hadn't slept in my own bed last night. Not that I cared. Lying next to Emily would have been worse. The silence between us had become something solid, something heavy, something I wasn't sure I wanted to lift anymore. I sat up slowly, rubbing a hand over my face. I could hear the faint shuffle of Emily upstairs, probably getting ready for another day of pretending everything was fine. That was her specialty, turning a blind eye, rewriting reality, making sure the world saw her version of things. Not this time. I stood, stretching out the knots in my shoulders before heading to the kitchen. The coffee pot was still warm from where she had brewed a cup before leaving. A single mug sat in the sink. Only one. She hadn't made one for me. Petty, but not surprising. As I poured myself a cup, my eyes drifted toward the back window. It was habit at this point, taking in the yard, the driveway, the quiet suburban street. But something gnawed at me, an itch at the back of my mind. Chris's car. I frowned, setting my cup down. He was our next-door neighbor, married, 2 kids. We had grilled together, drank beer on the porch, talked about renovations and football games. But over the past few months, I had started noticing little things. Like how his car was parked in our driveway when I got home from work. How Emily would brush it off, saying he had just stopped by to borrow something. Or how she'd be mid-laugh on the phone, only to lower her voice the second I walked into the room. I had ignored it, brushed it off as paranoia, as overthinking. But now, standing there in the kitchen, the past few months rearranged themselves in my head like puzzle pieces snapping into place. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving before I even had time to second-guess myself. The security app loaded, bringing up the logs of our home cameras. I scrolled through the timestamps, looking for patterns. And then I saw it. Chris, entering through the back door. Not once. Not twice. Multiple times. Always when I wasn't home. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. My breathing slowed, but my hands clenched into fists. I played back a clip. The footage wasn't high resolution, but it didn't need to be. It was him, clear as day, stepping through the back door like he belonged there. Like this was normal. I forced myself to sit down, my mind racing. There had to be an explanation, some reason he would be coming into my house when I wasn't home. But deep down, I already knew. My jaw tightened as I kept scrolling, looking through more footage, piecing together the timeline. It wasn't just recent. It had been happening for months. I should have felt rage. I should have wanted to punch a hole through the wall, drive to Chris's house, and drag him out by the collar. But what I felt instead was cold. Controlled. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I wasn't going to scream or yell. That was what Emily expected. That was what Chris expected. No, I was going to be smart. I closed the security app, my mind already shifting to the next step. Confronting Emily now wouldn't do anything. She would just lie, twist things around, make me the bad guy. I needed proof. Concrete proof. I exhaled slowly and stood, my heart pounding as I went upstairs. The bedroom door was closed, just like she had left it. I pushed it open, stepping inside. Emily's side of the room was perfect. Everything neat, everything in its place. She had always been meticulous about her things, always prided herself on being put together. I moved to the dresser, pulling open one of her drawers. Socks, folded clothes, nothing out of the ordinary. I checked another, and then, at the back of the closet, I found it. A small black box, tucked away behind a stack of neatly folded sweaters. My hands were steady as I pulled it out, flipping it open. Inside was a watch. An expensive watch. A men's watch. Not mine. I turned it over, my stomach tightening as I read the engraving on the back. To see love E. My hands curled around the box. So it was real. I exhaled through my nose, pressing the lid shut with a quiet snap. Emily had spent years chipping away at me, making me feel like I was never enough. She had humiliated me, disrespected me, and now she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And she thought I would never find out. I put the box back exactly where I found it. Then I walked out of the bedroom, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. This wasn't just about her not loving me anymore. This was about who she was. And if she thought I was going to sit back and let her walk all over me like a fool, she had another thing coming. She had underestimated me. Now it was my turn. I went through the rest of the day as if nothing had changed. I kissed Emily on the cheek when she came home, asked how her day was, and listened as she rambled about some meaningless drama with the other women in the neighborhood. It was almost laughable how easily she sat across from me, sipping her tea like she wasn't living a double life. Like she hadn't been sneaking around with Chris right under my nose. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Emily had spent years underestimating me, treating me like I was just some simple man who couldn't see what was happening right in front of him. But she had made one critical mistake. She thought I would never fight back. That night, while she showered, I retrieved the black box from the closet again, this time snapping a photo of the watch and the engraving inside. The proof was right there, staring me in the face. I didn't just suspect anymore. I knew. I had always been methodical in my work. As a contractor, I couldn't afford mistakes. Everything had to be precise, planned down to the last detail. Now, I was applying those same skills to something far more personal. I needed more than just a hunch. I needed evidence. I went back into the security app, reviewing the logs again. The timestamps showed Chris entering our home multiple times, and now I needed to know exactly what he was doing when he was inside. That meant getting more than just timestamps. That meant video. The next morning, I installed a hidden camera in the living room. It was small, discreet, tucked into a bookshelf where it would have a clear view of the back door. If Chris stepped foot into my house again, I would have everything I needed. By the time I finished setting it up, I had already moved on to the next phase. Emily always left her phone charging in the kitchen when she got ready for work. She had no idea that I had access to our shared cloud account, something she must have forgotten about because she hadn't hidden anything. I scrolled through her messages, and there it was. Emily, I miss you already. Chris, you know where to find me. Emily, tonight? Chris, I'll leave the back door open. My grip tightened around the phone, but I forced myself to stay calm. It was almost too easy. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to myself, then carefully placed the phone back where she had left it. When Emily walked into the kitchen minutes later, dressed in her work clothes, she didn't even glance at me. She had no idea she was caught. Heading out? I asked casually. She nodded, grabbing her keys. Yeah, long day ahead. I smiled. See you later. She gave me a quick, absent-minded peck on the cheek before walking out the door. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before moving on to the next step. I parked down the block, out of sight, and watched. Sure enough, not even 15 minutes after she had left, Chris's garage door opened. He stepped out, phone in hand, looking completely at ease. The same man who had stood in my yard, drinking my beer, pretending to be my friend. I exhaled slowly. I had everything I needed. That night, I waited. Emily was out later than usual, but I didn't text her. I didn't ask where she was. I didn't need to. The hidden camera in the living room would tell me everything. And it did. When I checked the footage, there he was, Chris, walking through my back door like he owned the place. Like he belonged here. Like I didn't exist. He sat on the couch, leaned back, comfortable. My blood boiled, but I pushed the anger aside. I needed to stay in control. Emily arrived a little while later, and I watched in real time as she walked through the door, smiling at him. She kissed him, right there, in my house. I clenched my jaw. I had seen enough. The next morning, I sat down at my desk, staring at my laptop screen. I had every piece of the puzzle now. Messages, timestamps, video proof. Now it was time to execute the plan. I started by emailing Chris's wife. I had only spoken to her a few times in passing, but I knew enough to be certain that she had no idea what was going on. Subject, something you should see. Body. I'm sorry to be the one to send this, but you deserve to know. I attached the footage, the screenshots, and sent the email before I could second-guess myself. Now, it was only a matter of time. Emily came home that night with the same fake smile she always wore. She had no idea that her entire world was about to come crashing down, and I couldn't wait to watch it happen. The house felt different that night. Heavier, like the walls were holding onto the truth I now carried. I sat at the kitchen table, watching the clock, listening to the faint ticking of the second hand as I waited. My phone sat in front of me, face down. I had sent the email to Chris's wife earlier that afternoon, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything imploded. Emily walked in just after 8. She looked normal, like nothing had changed, like she hadn't spent the last few months sneaking around behind my back. She tossed her keys onto the counter, stretching her arms dramatically. God, what a day, she sighed, her voice dripping with the usual exhaustion she faked whenever she wanted sympathy. I said nothing. She frowned, glancing at me. Jake. I took my time before looking up. Yeah. Her head tilted slightly. You okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, just a long day. She walked over to the fridge, opening it like she didn't have a single worry in the world. "Tell me about it," she muttered, reaching for a bottle of water. "Work has been insane lately." I clenched my jaw, watching her lie so effortlessly. The camera footage was still fresh in my mind. Her walking through the door, the way she smiled at Chris, how natural it had seemed. I gripped my chair a little tighter. She turned back to me, leaning against the counter. "You sure you're okay? You seem a little off." I exhaled slowly. "I was just thinking about us." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh," I nodded, keeping my voice calm. "You know, our marriage. Trust. That kind of thing." There was the slightest hesitation in her expression, a flicker of something before she smoothed it over. "Where's this coming from?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "I don't know, Emily. Maybe it's because I found this." I pulled out my phone, turned it over, and pressed play. The video started. The grainy footage of Chris walking through my back door, sitting on my couch, waiting for my wife. And then Emily appearing, greeting him the way a wife should greet her husband. Her face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I let it play for a few more seconds before I hit pause. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. I stared at her, waiting. "Jake." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not what it looks like." A humorless laugh escaped me. "Not what it looks like." I shook my head, tossing my phone onto the table. "Emily, I have video proof." What else could it possibly be? She swallowed hard. A loud knock at the door cut her off. She flinched. I didn't move. The knock came again, more forceful this time. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Chris's wife stood on the porch, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Her hands trembled at her sides, and when she spoke, her voice was sharp and full of betrayal. He admitted it. Emily let out a choked noise behind me. "Wait." Chris's wife ignored her, locking eyes with me. "I got your email." I confronted him. He didn't even deny it. I nodded slowly. Figured he wouldn't. Her gaze flickered to Emily, her lips curling in disgust. "How dare you?" Emily took a step forward, her hands raised like she could somehow talk her way out of this. "Please, just let me explain." Chris's wife laughed. A bitter, broken sound. "Explain? Oh, I would love to hear this." She crossed her arms, shaking her head. "You stood in my house. You smiled at me. You played with my kids. And this whole time, you were sleeping with my husband." Emily stammered, eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. I didn't mean for it to happen." Chris's wife's face twisted in rage. "You didn't mean for it to happen?" She let out a sharp breath. "You're pathetic." Emily's hands balled into fists. "I'm not." Another voice cut through the chaos. "Emily." We all turned. Chris stood at the edge of the driveway, looking like a man who had just realized he was standing on a sinking ship. His face was pale, his hands shoved into his pockets, his body tense. I tilted my head. "You showed up. Brave." He ignored me, looking at Emily instead. Chris's wife turned on him, her voice like a whip. "Don't. You've done enough." Emily stared at Chris, and for the first time, I saw something different in her expression. Not confidence, not arrogance. Panic. "Chris," she breathed. He wouldn't even look at her. That's when she realized. She had ruined everything. She had spent months sneaking around, thinking she was so careful, so smart. But now, she was standing in the ruins of her own making. Chris's wife turned back to me, exhaling slowly. "I'm done with this. I'm filing for divorce first thing in the morning." Chris's head snapped up. "Wait." She shot him a glare that could have burned through steel. "Shut up." And just like that, she walked away. Chris hesitated, looking at Emily for one last second before following his wife, disappearing down the street like a coward. And then it was just me and her. Emily swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "Jake, please." I turned to face her fully. "Pack your things." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't mean that." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Of do." She shook her head, reaching for me. "Jake." I stepped back. "You lied to me. You humiliated me. And you thought you could get away with it." She sniffled. "I still love you." I laughed. "You don't even know what love is." Her bottom lip trembled. I exhaled, shaking my head. "You have until tomorrow. After that, I'm changing the locks." Emily choked on a sob. Please don't do this. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I turned around and walked inside, shutting the door behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The morning after the confrontation, the house was eerily quiet. I sat in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, listening to the occasional shuffle of movement upstairs. Emily was still here. I could hear her packing, moving from room to room, occasionally stopping as if she didn't know what to do next. I had expected more of a fight. I had expected pleading, manipulation, maybe even one of her infamous guilt trips. But last night, after I told her to pack her things, she had barely spoken. Maybe she finally understood there was no way out of this. No excuse, no rewriting of events that could make this disappear. I checked my phone. A message from Mark. She gone yet? I smirked. Almost. I set my phone down and took another sip of coffee, my mind already moving to the next step. I had given her until this morning to get out, and I meant it. I had already called a locksmith. He'd be here by noon. Once she walked out that door, she wouldn't be coming back. A heavy thud echoed from upstairs. Then silence. I sighed, standing up and making my way toward the staircase. As I reached the bedroom, I found Emily sitting on the edge of the bed, a half-packed suitcase beside her. Her shoulders were slumped, her head down, fingers gripping the edge of the mattress. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Jake, do we really have to do this?" I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "You tell me." She swallowed hard. "I know I messed up." I let out a dry laugh. "Messed up?" I shook my head. "Emily, you destroyed everything. Our marriage, my trust, my respect for you. You chose this." Her lower lip trembled. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I tilted my head. "That's funny because you sure as hell didn't mind doing it." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Jake, please. We've built a life together. We can fix this." I pushed off the door frame and stepped closer. "You didn't want to fix anything when you were sneaking around with Chris, did you?" She flinched at his name. I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Her face crumbled. "You really don't love me anymore?" I exhaled. "Love." I let the word hang in the air before shaking my head. "You think this is love? Lying to me, making me feel like I wasn't enough? Treating me like a joke while you ran around behind my back?" She sobbed harder. I watched her for a moment, feeling nothing but exhaustion. No more anger, no more pain. Just an overwhelming sense of relief that I was finally done. "You should go," I said quietly. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Not my problem." She stared at me, like she couldn't believe I wasn't going to give in. That's who I'd always been. The one who fixed things, the one who made sure everything stayed together. But not anymore. She finally stood, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. "I don't know how to do this without you." I raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with our neighbor." Her face twisted in pain, and for a moment I almost felt bad. Almost. She pulled her suitcase toward the stairs, her movements slow, hesitant, as if she was waiting for me to stop her. But I didn't. I followed her down, watching as she reached the front door. She hesitated again, gripping the handle. "This doesn't have to be the end, Jake." I let out a quiet breath. "It already is." She nodded slowly, then opened the door and stepped out. I waited until I heard the car engine start, until I saw the taillights disappear down the street. Then, without hesitation, I locked the door. An hour later, the locksmith arrived. By noon, I had changed every lock in the house. By evening, I sat in the living room, looking around at the space that had once felt like a home, but now felt like something else entirely. Something unfinished. Something waiting to be rebuilt. And for the first time in years, I was ready to start over. The day after Emily left, I woke up to an unfamiliar stillness. No passive-aggressive sighs from across the room. No phone alarms blaring with her notifications. Just silence. It should have felt empty, maybe even lonely, but it didn't. It felt like the first real breath I had taken in years. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my hands together as the weight of everything settled in. Emily was gone, but this wasn't over. There were legal matters to handle, divorce papers to file, assets to divide. I had let her walk away from our home, but I wasn't about to let her take anything else from me. By midday, I was sitting across from my lawyer in a small downtown office, flipping through the divorce paperwork. She was a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. And within 5 minutes of meeting me, she already had the situation figured out. She cheated, she said plainly, tapping a pen against the file. You have proof. That puts you in control here. I nodded. What's the fastest way to make this happen? She smirked. That depends. Do you want a clean break? Or do you want to make sure she doesn't walk away with a single thing? I leaned back, thinking about everything Emily had put me through, how she had chipped away at me, belittled me, humiliated me, how she had betrayed me, then had the audacity to beg me not to leave her. She gets nothing, I said. My lawyer nodded like she had been expecting that answer. Good, because you have the leverage. She pulled out a form. Since you're the primary financial contributor to the marriage, she could try to go after spousal support. But because you have undeniable proof of infidelity, she doesn't have much ground to stand on. I exhaled slowly. And the house. She flipped through another section of the file. Your name is on the deed. If you want to sell it and walk away, that's your call. I thought about that for a moment. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a museum of every mistake I had made in trusting Emily. The idea of staying here, surrounded by memories of a life that had been nothing but a lie, made my stomach turn. Sell it, I said. She nodded, making notes. And your shared accounts? I smirked. Already taken care of. Her eyebrow arched slightly in approval. Smart man. We went through the rest of the process, page by page. By the time I walked out of the office, the divorce was officially in motion. Emily was about to realize just how much her actions were going to cost her. 2 days later, she called me. I stared at her name flashing on my screen, debating whether to answer. Then with a sigh, I picked up. What do you want, Emily? There was silence for a moment, then a sniffle. Jake. I got the papers. I didn't say anything. She let out a shaky breath. I don't understand. You're taking everything. I leaned back in my chair. You mean like how you took our marriage and threw it away? She swallowed hard. Jake, I made a mistake. I let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, you did. I don't have anywhere to go. Not my problem. Her voice cracked. You don't have to be so cruel. I clenched my jaw, my patience wearing thin. Cruel? Cruel would be dragging you through court and making sure everyone knows what you did. I can make your life hell, Emily. I can make sure you never recover from this. Silence. She sniffled again. I still love you. I closed my eyes, exhaling. No, you don't. You love control, and you don't have it anymore. She didn't respond. I glanced at my watch. Sign the papers, Emily. Make this easy. Her breathing was unsteady. And if I don't, I smirked. Then you'll regret it. She let out a soft sob before the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a second before tossing it onto the table. It was over. She just hadn't accepted it yet. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my lawyer. She's signed, she said, her voice light with amusement. No fight. No counters. It's done. A slow smile spread across my face. Good. Now, she continued, we'll move forward with finalizing everything. Shouldn't take more than a couple of months. After that, you're officially free. Free. The words settled into my chest like a weight lifting. Emily had taken so much from me. But now, she had nothing left to hold on to. And I had everything ahead of me. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.